The night sky turned orange as flames ripped through my workshop, the one place I'd poured every ounce of sweat and soul into. I stood there helpless, gripping a useless garden hose, while neighbors gathered on the curb in shock. And through the smoke, she appeared. Karen, HOA president. Arms folded, smirking like she'd been waiting for this moment. I shouted, "You did this!" She didn't deny it. She just whispered, "Now you'll finally listen." That fire didn't just burn wood and tools. It lit the fuse of war. If you've ever felt that surge of power when standing up to bullies, hit subscribe now. This showdown is about to become a masterclass in fighting back. I'm a builder, always have been. While other kids were out chasing balls or glued to video games, I was in the garage with my dad, sanding down planks of pine, learning how to square a frame, how to run my hand along a beam and know if it would hold. My dad used to say, measure twice, cut once, and always build like you're making it for your own family. That stuck with me. Because for us, building wasn't just about putting wood together. It was survival. My dad worked 3 jobs, but it was the side projects, the sheds and kitchens and porches he built for neighbors that kept food on our table. When I turned 18, I didn't run to college like everyone else. I picked up my father's hammer. I learned the trades the hard way, under the sun, through winters, carrying lumber until my hands bled. I earned every scar on my knuckles. Over the years, I became more than a carpenter. I became the guy people called when they wanted something done right. Eventually, I built my own company, a small construction outfit. Nothing fancy, just me, a couple of guys I trust, and a name that carries weight. I don't advertise much. Word of mouth is enough. Because if you've ever seen the look on a family's face when they step into their dream home for the first time, you know reputation is worth more than a billboard. And the crown jewel of everything I've worked for? My workshop. It wasn't just a shed or a garage, it was my sanctuary. A freestanding shop in the back of my property, outfitted with every tool I'd collected since my teenage years. Lathes, drills, custom rigs, and one-of-a-kind pieces my dad left me. Every beam, every window, every nail in that workshop, I placed with my own hands. I spent years perfecting it, wiring the lights, insulating the walls, crafting the benches exactly at my height. It was more than a workplace. It was where I dreamed. That workshop was where my son learned how to hold a hammer, just like I once did. It was where my daughter helped me paint signs for her lemonade stand. It was where I worked late nights to design the expansion for our own home, the one I promised my wife would be her forever nest. So, when Karen, the HOA president, started targeting me, it wasn't about weeds or fence heights or parking tickets like she claimed. No, it was about breaking me where it hurt most. She saw the workshop as an eyesore. To me, it was a legacy, a link to my father and a future for my kids. I've dealt with tough clients. I've argued with city inspectors. But nothing prepared me for the kind of venom that seeps out of an HOA president who thinks the bylaws make her king. Or, in this case, queen. Karen didn't just hand out fines. She wove herself into every corner of our lives. But I wasn't going to back down. Not when my family's peace, my father's memory, and my own livelihood were tied up in that backyard shop. Every builder knows this. If you don't stand firm when the ground shifts, the whole structure collapses. That's what this fight became. Not just about one man versus an HOA. Not just about one fire. It became about defending the foundation of who I am. A father, a husband, a craftsman. Karen thought she could scare me into obedience. She thought burning down my workshop would silence me. But here's the thing. You can burn wood, you can melt metal, but you can't kill resolve. That's why I fought. For my kids, for my wife, for the name my father gave me, for the shop that once stood proud behind my house, and for every homeowner who's ever been told by an HOA bully that they don't belong in their own home. Because when you take away a man's legacy, you don't defeat him. You forge him into something sharper, stronger, unstoppable. Karen didn't come out swinging all at once. That's not how people like her work. They don't start with fire, they start with sparks. The first time she came after me, it was almost laughable. A letter slid into my mailbox, a courtesy notice from the HOA. It said my grass was 1 inch higher than neighborhood standards. 1 inch. I laughed, mowed the lawn that same afternoon, and thought nothing of it. But when I looked up, she was standing on her porch across the street, arms crossed, notebook in hand, watching me. That was the first crack. A week later, another letter. This time, it claimed my work truck, parked in my own driveway, was a commercial vehicle, and therefore prohibited. Never mind that I paid for that truck with my bare hands, that it had no company logos, nothing that screamed business. To her, it was evidence of a crime against her perfect little kingdom. I pushed back. I sent her an email, calm but firm, explaining the HOA bylaws didn't prohibit what she claimed. She didn't reply. Instead, 2 days later, I got a second violation notice, this time for improper storage. She said my children's bicycles, leaning against the side of the garage, were clutter. Bicycles. It became a pattern. Every week, some new nitpick arrived in my mailbox. My garbage cans weren't pulled in fast enough. My porch light was too bright. My fence color was off-shade beige. I didn't even know off-shade beige was a crime until Karen invented it. At first, my wife told me to ignore her. She's just lonely, she said. Some people need to feel important. But this wasn't loneliness. This was control. This was precision. Karen didn't blanket the neighborhood with violations. No, she was selective. She picked targets. And for reasons I didn't yet understand, she picked me. I started noticing other things. Mr. Hahn, the quiet man on the corner with the vegetable garden, suddenly had to rip out his tomato plants because Karen claimed they were unsightly. Mrs. Jenkins, the widow who baked cookies for every block party, got fined because her curtains weren't neutral colors. The Smiths, a young couple with a baby, were written up because their stroller was left on the porch overnight. Karen didn't just enforce rules, she bent them, twisted them, created them out of thin air, but only against people she thought wouldn't fight back, and she never left fingerprints. When neighbors complained, she'd smile sweetly and say, "Oh, it's just procedure. I don't make the rules." But we all knew she did. She was the kind of person who treated the HOA rulebook like a weapon, a sword she swung when she wanted, a shield she hid behind when challenged. I'll never forget the day she showed up at my door in person. I opened it to see her standing there, clipboard in hand, lips painted in that sharp red she always wore. She didn't even say hello. She just looked past me, into my house, like she was inspecting it without permission. "You'll want to move those tools out of sight," she said. "We wouldn't want the neighborhood looking industrial." Industrial. That was her word for my life's work. I told her flat out, "This is my home, my property. You don't get to tell me how I use it." Her eyes narrowed, and then she smiled, a smile that chilled me to the bone. "We'll see about that," she said, before turning on her heel and walking away. That was the moment I realized something important. Karen wasn't just a busybody. She was dangerous. She had a plan. She was testing me, poking me, waiting for me to crack. Every letter, every warning, every smug little smile was part of a game, her game. But the thing about builders is, we notice patterns. Just like you can tell a roof is going to leak before the first drop falls, I could see where this was heading. She wasn't going to stop with fines and warnings. She was escalating. And if I didn't brace myself, she was going to bring the whole house down around me. Karen's power didn't come from the HOA bylaws. It came from fear. She thrived on making people feel small, on convincing them they were powerless. But she underestimated me. Because I wasn't afraid of paperwork. I wasn't afraid of gossip. And I sure as hell wasn't afraid of her. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have predicted, was just how far she'd go when intimidation stopped working. Her first real strike was coming, and it would hit my family where it hurt most. It started on a Monday, the kind of morning where nothing feels wrong yet. The coffee steamed, the kids were arguing over cereal. I packed my lunch, kissed my wife on the forehead, and headed for the back door like I always do, ready to lose myself in the hum of saws and the comfort of wood grain. Then I saw the sticker. Fluorescent orange, big block letters. Plastered across my workshop door like a bruise. Stop work. Imminent hazard. Do not enter. I froze. My hand was still on the doorknob. The metal felt cold, even in the summer heat. For a few seconds, I didn't breathe. The world went quiet. The way it does right before a nail gun fires. Tight, expectant, dangerous. "Babe," my wife called from the kitchen. "You coming back for your thermos?" I didn't answer. I peeled the corner of the sticker like it might be a bad joke. It wasn't. There were signatures, a case number, the city seal stamped in ink. 2 more notices were taped beside it. One from the fire marshal, one from code enforcement. Words jumped out at me like punches. Combustibles, unpermitted wiring, community complaint. Community complaint. That's what did it. The words snapped me out of the fog. I stepped back, took in the scene. My shop had been red tagged. My shop, the place I built with my own hands, wired by the book, inspected when I put it up, insured, grounded, safe. Someone had said otherwise. Someone with a grudge and time to make calls. Karen. I didn't need proof to know. I could already see her, lips tight with satisfaction, watching through her blinds as my world slowed to a crawl. By 9 a.m., 2 white city trucks rolled up. An inspector and a fire marshal climbed out, stern faces, clipboards in hand. I met them at the side gate, palms open. I kept my voice level. I always do when authority shows up. Respect is cheaper than a fight. "Morning," I said. "You're here about the notice?" The inspector nodded. "We received a report about flammable storage and unsafe electrical work in a detached accessory structure. We have to verify." "Who reported it?" I asked. He glanced at his clipboard. "Anonymous." "Of course." "Look," I said, "I'm licensed. I built this to code. We passed inspection when we poured the slab. I keep solvents in rated cabinets. The wiring is on GFCIs with proper load calculations. I can show you receipts." The fire marshal lifted a hand. "We still need to look." I unlocked the door. The orange sticker tore with a sound that made my stomach drop. They walked the shop from end to end, slow and clinical. They checked the breaker panel. They opened the cabinets where I keep finishes. They tested outlets. They took pictures of my dust collector, my extension cords wound neat and high, my emergency extinguisher mounted by the door like a little red soldier waiting for a war I prayed would never come. My wife stood in the doorway, arms around herself, hair still wet from her morning shower. She tried to smile at me when our eyes met. She couldn't quite do it. The fire marshal turned a page on his clipboard. "You run business operations out of here?" "I build here," I said. "I deliver from job sites. I don't receive clients at the house." The inspector looked up at the rafters. "You pulled a separate electrical permit for this panel?" "Yes," I said. "I have the paperwork." He made a note. The room was quiet except for their pens. When they finally stepped back outside, the sun seemed too bright. The inspector spoke first. "The structure looks safe, but the complaint came with photos of open flames near solvents." He flipped his clipboard. "Do you ever use torches out here?" "Not near finish," I said. "Never?" The fire marshal rubbed at the seal on the notice with his thumb, as if testing glue. "We're going to recommend temporary suspension until we verify for permits and cabinet ratings. It's procedure." My jaw flexed. "How long?" "A few days," he said. "Maybe a week." A week. A week of lost hours, delayed builds, clients wondering why their cabinets weren't ready, why their trim packages were behind. A week of explaining that I wasn't careless, that a bright orange sticker didn't mean I was reckless or dangerous. Behind the inspectors, a woman in a red blouse paused on the sidewalk with her little dog. She didn't look at us. She didn't need to. I could feel her eyes flick toward the orange like it was a flag planted in my yard. Unsafe. Problem. Target. After they left, I stood in the driveway with my hands on my hips, breathing slow. I could name every scent: cedar, motor oil, something sweet from my daughter's bubble wand drying on the porch rail. I could also feel something new, something rotten: shame. That orange sticker didn't care about the truth. It shouted louder than I could. At noon, the HOA email hit. Subject: Community Safety Notice. Karen's voice bled through the screen even without her name. Formal, pruned, smug. "We regret to inform residents that a detached structure on Birchwood Lane has been flagged by city officials for safety concerns. Please be vigilant about compliance and report any suspicious activity. Safety is our top priority." She didn't say my address. She didn't have to. Everyone knew where the orange was. My phone buzzed with clients. A few were kind. One said he'd wait. Two asked awkward and stiff. If I could provide assurance I wasn't exposing them to risk, another canceled outright. "We have small children," he wrote. "This makes us nervous. Best of luck." By dinner, the kids were quiet. My son kept glancing out the window, like the sticker might climb down and come for him. My daughter asked if firefighters were mad at Daddy. My wife held my hand under the table with a grip that said, "Don't you dare break." I didn't. Not there. Not in front of them. At 9 p.m., a pickup idled slow past the house. A camera phone raised out the window. The engine crawled. The phone gleamed. I stepped onto the porch and the truck sped up, taillights bleeding red into the cul-de-sac. I scanned the shadows and saw porch lights click on, up and down the street, one by one, like an audience settling in. I slept in pieces that night. Every creak was a footstep. Every breeze against the siding was a whisper. Unsafe, unsafe, unsafe. At 3:12 a.m., I got up, put on boots, and walked to the workshop. I ran my fingers over the sticker again, felt the grit in its edge, the promise in it. We can do this to you whenever we want. That was the first time I felt afraid in my own yard. In the morning, I started the paperwork marathon. I pulled permits, scanned receipts, printed dates. I drafted a calm, factual email to the HOA requesting they retract the safety notice until the city concluded. I copied the board. I used words like verification and documentation and good faith. Karen replied in 8 minutes. "We appreciate your concern. The association must prioritize safety. Please resolve matters with the city before contacting us about rescission. Meanwhile, any work visible from the street remains a violation. No signature, no name, just the Queen speaking through a throne." By afternoon, a private security patrol car rolled the block, white, unmarked. The driver slowed in front of my driveway, spotlight sweeping lazily across the closed shop door, across my living room window, across the frightened face of my son looking out between the curtains. That was the worst moment. Not the sticker, not the email, not the canceled job. It was the way my boy stepped back from our own window like light could burn him. I put my arm around him. "You're safe," I said. "This is our home." He nodded, but his eyes didn't believe me. I knew then that this wasn't about code or paint swatches. It was a message. Karen couldn't force me to kneel with fines, so she sent fear to do the job. The ground had shifted under our house, and if I didn't brace the structure, the next hit would bring it down. It was a Friday night, the kind where the neighborhood usually hummed with sprinklers and barbecue smoke. But that night, our block felt wrong. The air was heavy, like a storm about to split open. I was in the living room, polishing off paperwork with the TV murmuring in the background when the first knock came, sharp, hollow. Too late in the evening to be friendly. My wife peeked through the blinds, her face drained. "It's the police." 2 officers stood on the porch, flashlights pointed at our windows, hands resting close to their belts. I opened the door, heart thudding. "Sir, we received a report of domestic violence at this address." The words hung in the air like acid. I shook my head instantly. "Number? Absolutely not. There's no violence here. My kids are asleep. My wife's right here. This is insane." One officer squinted, hand still near his holster. "Mind if we take a look?" Before I could answer, my wife spoke. "Yes, we mind. This is our home. You don't have a warrant." That's when I realized this wasn't just harassment. This was a setup. Someone had called in a false report, the kind designed to paint us as dangerous, to shame us in front of neighbors, maybe worse. Because already, porch lights were flicking on. Across the street, curtains shifted. I caught a silhouette, arms folded, head tilted just enough to watch the show. Karen. The officers lingered. Tension bristled like static. One finally sighed. "Sir, we'll note it. But if another call comes, we'll have to escalate." They walked away slowly, their flashlights cutting across my lawn, across the bright orange sticker still clinging to my workshop door like a scar. When the cruiser pulled off, I shut the door and pressed my forehead against the wood. My wife touched my back. Her voice shook. "They could have drawn on you." And she was right. One twitch, one wrong move, one neighbor's lie, and my kids could have grown up with their father in handcuffs, or worse. That was the breaking point. But the night wasn't over. At 2:17 a.m., motion sensors tripped in the backyard. The security floodlight snapped on. I sat up in bed instantly, every nerve on fire. Then came the sound, wood splintering. Someone was at the workshop. I grabbed the bat from under the bed and crept through the house, every step echoing in my skull. My wife dialed 911 with trembling fingers. Through the kitchen window, I saw them. Two figures in hoodies, prying at the side door of my shop. One laughed, low and ugly, like this was entertainment. My chest burned with rage. They weren't there to steal tools. They were there to finish what the sticker had started, destroy my sanctuary. But what they didn't know was that I had upgraded everything after the first strike. Cameras, sensors, redundant backups. And they were already caught on tape. The bigger one finally kicked the door in. The crash rattled the glassware in our kitchen cabinets. My daughter cried out from her bedroom, small and scared. That sound, my little girl's sobs, nearly broke me. I gripped the bat so tight my knuckles went white. Every instinct screamed at me to charge out there, to make them pay. But I didn't. Not yet. Because right then, the floodlight caught their faces. Clear as day. No masks. And the camera above the door blinked its little red light, recording every frame. They poured something on the floor inside. Gasoline. The acrid scent carried on the night air. That's when I realized they weren't just breaking in. They were going to torch it. Again. The first match flared. My wife screamed my name. And like divine timing, sirens wailed in the distance. The figures froze. They cursed, stumbled, bolted out the side gate just as headlights cut into the street. I held my kids tight in the hallway as the fire truck screamed past our house, searching for smoke. The shop was saved by seconds. The floor inside was soaked, but the flames hadn't caught. Not yet. By dawn, my yard was a crime scene. Police tape stretched across the gate. Neighbors stood in clusters, whispering. Karen's porch light was on, but she never stepped outside. Not once. She didn't need to. I did the walkthrough with an officer, pointing out the broken door, the gas stains, the camera above the frame. It got everything, I said. My voice didn't shake. Not this time. We played the footage back right there on my phone. Two men, clear faces, hoodies down, handling gas cans, laughing like devils. The officer's eyebrows rose. This isn't vandalism. This is arson. Finally, there was proof. Not suspicion, not gossip, evidence. My neighbors peeked from their porches, eyes darting between me and the officers, between the shop and the tape. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in their faces. Doubt about the Queen. Doubt about the story she'd been selling them. Because this wasn't just weeds or fences or paint colors. This was fire. This was criminal. And it had her fingerprints all over it, even if she didn't strike the match. The officers bagged evidence. The crime scene unit snapped photos. My wife carried the kids to her sister's house for the weekend, just to give them peace. But I stayed. I stood in that backyard until the sun came up, jaw clenched, eyes locked on Karen's house across the street. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. She knew I knew. The line had been crossed, and now I had the kind of evidence that could burn her throne to the ground. The morning after the attempted arson, I stopped being a homeowner under siege. I became an investigator. I wasn't going to let this slip into rumor, or he said, she said. I had gasoline-stained floorboards, a splintered door, and high-definition video of two men trying to set my shop ablaze. That was evidence, that was leverage, and I was going to use it. First, I copied the footage 3 times. One went on a secure drive, one went to the cloud, one stayed with me. If Karen thought she could make proof disappear the way she erased complaints, she was wrong. Next, I cataloged everything. Still shots of the suspects' faces, timestamps, the exact second the match lit and the sirens cut through the night. I saved the 911 call recording too. The dispatcher's voice, my wife's frantic breathing, the exact moment she whispered, "They're trying to burn it." Then I called the police station, gave the case number, and demanded an update. They confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't vandalism, it was felony arson. But the suspects, not strangers. One was the brother-in-law of an HOA board member, the other, a seasonal employee at Karen's husband's landscaping company. That wasn't coincidence. That was connection. I went deeper. I requested HOA email records under the association's transparency bylaws. They stonewalled me at first, but when I quoted the exact statute in the charter, they caved. Buried in the chain were little nuggets. Karen telling the board, "We must stay vigilant about safety concerns with Birchwood Lane." Another email. "Certain residents set bad examples. If they won't comply, stronger measures may be needed." Stronger measures. She'd written it herself. And then there was the false police call, the so-called domestic violence report. I requested the public log. Caller ID blocked. But the transcript showed the caller claimed to be a neighbor who heard fighting. Male voice. Nervous. The address given? Mine. I played it back. My stomach turned. The voice was disguised, forced lower, but the cadence, the clipped phrasing, matched someone I'd heard before. Karen's husband. The next HOA meeting was packed. Neighbors leaned against walls, chairs filled, the air buzzing with unease. Karen sat at the front like always, her red blouse sharp as a warning sign, gavel resting on the table. She started with her usual smug tone. First order of business, ongoing safety violations. Her eyes flicked to me, waiting for me to squirm, but I didn't. Because 2 seats down, Mr. Hahn raised his hand. The quiet man with the vegetable garden, he cleared his throat. Are we sure we're targeting the right people? Because I've lived here 20 years. I've never once seen his workshop unsafe. A ripple moved through the room. Karen's smile tightened. We have procedures, Mr. Hahn. It's not personal. But Mrs. Jenkins spoke next, her voice shaky but firm. It feels personal. He's not the only one with a shed, or tools. Why isn't anyone else getting notices? Karen gripped her gavel. Order, please. But the cracks were showing. The whispers were spreading. People were starting to wonder if the Queen was ruling for the community, or for herself. I didn't rush. Builders know you don't reveal the blueprint until the foundation is set. I gathered one last piece of proof. From my camera footage, I matched the time of the attempted arson to a phone ping. A neighbor across the street, a teenager who often live-streamed video games late into the night, had captured background audio during one of his streams. At 2:18 a.m., faint in the distance, a car engine idled. A woman's voice barked, "Hurry up!" It wasn't much. But when I isolated the clip and compared it to HOA meeting recordings, the tone was unmistakable. It was Karen. She hadn't struck the match. But she had been there, parked on the curb, urging them to do it. I put everything together like I would a build, neat, precise, layered so nothing could collapse under pressure. Video footage of the intruders, photos of the gasoline stains, 911 recordings, HOA, emails with stronger, measures, the false police call logs, the live stream audio clip, all time-stamped, all connected. I wasn't just ready to defend myself, I was ready to expose her. And as I tucked my kids in that night, my son whispered, "Daddy, will they come back?" I brushed his hair back. "Not after what we show them next," I said. Because Karen thought intimidation would keep us quiet. But the truth was a hammer. And I was about to swing it. The night of the HOA showdown, the community hall felt like a courtroom. Folding chairs scraped the linoleum, neighbors packed shoulder to shoulder, and every whispered breath carried tension. Karen sat at the front table, gavel in hand, posture perfect, lips painted crimson. She looked less like a volunteer board president and more like a monarch about to issue decrees. Her husband lounged behind her, arms crossed, a smug little grin that made my blood run hotter. She called the meeting to order. "Tonight we'll be addressing the ongoing violations at—" I stood, not loud, not dramatic, just steady. "Before you start, I have evidence the board needs to see." All eyes turned, whispers swelled, Karen's smile thinned. "Mr. Birchwood," she started, voice honey sweet. "The agenda—" "Forget the agenda," I said. "This is about my family's safety, and every homeowner here deserves to know the truth." I walked to the front, a thumb drive clenched in my hand like a weapon. The room hushed as I plugged it into the projector. The first image filled the wall. 2 men in hoodies, faces clear, one holding a red gas can. A timestamp glowed in the corner. Gasps. "That," I said, my voice hard, "is my workshop door being kicked in at 2:17 a.m. Click. The next still. The taller man splashing gasoline across my floor. Click. The match flaring. A murmur rippled through the crowd, sharp and angry. I let it build, then turned. Now, some of you might think this is just vandalism. Wrong. This was arson, felony arson. My kids were asleep 20 feet away while these men tried to torch our lives." Karen slammed her gavel. "This is highly inappropriate. These accusations have no place." I raised a hand. "I'm not done." Click. An email appeared, blown up larger than life. "If they won't comply, stronger measures may be needed." Her words, her signature. "Recognize this?" I asked. Karen's eyes darted to the board members. "Out of context?" "Fine," I said. "Let's add context." Click. The transcript of the 911 call. The so-called anonymous neighbor reporting domestic violence at my address. The audio played. A male voice, shaky, forced, deep. "I heard fighting. Send someone quick." I paused it. Compare the cadence to her husband right here. Same clipped phrasing, same tone. Only difference? He tried to disguise it. Her husband shifted in his chair, jaw tight. A few neighbors turned to look at him, eyes narrowing. And then came the final blow. Click. A grainy video clip from a teenager's live stream. In the background, faint but clear, a woman's voice barking, "Hurry up!" The timestamp matched my footage of the break-in. I froze the frame. That voice. Compare it to every HOA meeting recording. Same pitch, same bite. That's Karen, sitting outside, urging them to burn my shop. The room erupted. Gasps, shouts, someone yelling, "That's enough!" Another, "She put us all at risk." Karen's face went pale, then red. She slammed the gavel so hard it cracked. "This is slander. None of this is admissible." "It's not slander," I cut in. "It's evidence. The police have copies. The fire marshal has copies. And now, so do all of you." I turned to the neighbors, scanning the faces of people I'd shared block parties and holiday lights with. This wasn't just an attack on me. It was an attack on our community, on trust, on safety. If she'll burn down my shop, what will she do to you when you cross her? The silence that followed was thick. Karen tried to speak again, but this time nobody listened. Mr. Hahn stood. His voice was calm, resolute. "I move to censure the president." Mrs. Jenkins chimed in. "I second." Hands shot up, a wave of them. One after another, neighbors who had once stayed silent, now voting, eyes blazing with anger. Karen slammed the broken gavel again, but it was useless. The vote was overwhelming. She was stripped of her position, right there in the hall she thought she owned. Her husband muttered something under his breath and stormed out. Karen followed, shoulders stiff, eyes burning holes into me as she passed. But this time, I didn't look away. For the first time in months, I felt air in my lungs again. The weight was lifting. The queen had fallen, and the community had finally seen the truth. The morning after the showdown, the air on Birchwood Lane felt different. For the first time in months, I woke up without a knot in my chest. No flashing patrol cars idling by my driveway. No threatening letters stuffed in my mailbox. No queen watching from her porch with folded arms and a smirk. Just sunlight, birds, and the sound of my kids laughing in the kitchen. I stepped outside barefoot, coffee in hand, and looked at the workshop. The door was patched, the gasoline smell long gone, but scars remained on the floorboards, scars that told a story, scars I wasn't going to cover up. They were reminders of what we endured, of how close we came to losing it all, and of how we stood our ground. That weekend, we had a different kind of family project. My wife suggested we repaint the old wooden mailbox at the curb, the one Karen had called non-compliant 3 times in her endless letters. The kids picked bright blue paint, the same shade as the sky overhead. We painted together, splashing more on our clothes than on the box. my daughter traced a crooked little heart on the side. My son painted. Our last name in bold strokes, messy but proud. And when we were done, we stood back and smiled. It wasn't just a mailbox anymore. It was a flag, a declaration. We're still here. We're not afraid. That night, my wife whispered, "I feel safe again." And I believed her. The next week, neighbors started showing up. Mr. Hahn brought over a bundle of seedlings. "For your shop," he said shyly. Together, we dug a hole in the corner of the yard and planted a young oak tree. My son patted the soil down with his small hands. "Will it get big?" he asked. "Bigger than this house," I said, "and it'll stand longer than any rule Karen ever wrote." The oak became more than a tree. It became our promise that something lasting would grow from the ashes of what she tried to burn. The HOA board reorganized quickly after Karen's fall. With her gone, the neighbors discovered something remarkable. We didn't hate each other. We had just been manipulated, divided by fear. At the first meeting without her, the tension was gone. No one barked orders. No one waved bylaws like weapons. Instead, people shared concerns honestly. Streetlights that needed fixing, sidewalks that needed repair. And instead of pointing fingers, folks volunteered. Mrs. Jenkins offered to run bake sales to fund community projects. The Smiths, the young couple with the baby, volunteered to organize Neighborhood Watch. But a real one, built on trust, not intimidation. Even the fire marshal came to reassure everyone that our homes were safe. For the first time, Birchwood Lane felt like a community instead of a battlefield. A month later, my phone rang. It was a new client. His voice was cheerful, almost giddy. "I hear you're the guy who builds dream homes. I've seen your work, and I want you for ours." The name? Karen's husband. I nearly laughed out loud. After everything his wife had done, after the lies and the fire and the humiliation, he wanted me to build his dream home. I took the job, not out of spite, not out of vengeance, but because nothing proves strength like succeeding in front of those who wished you'd fail. And every nail I drove into that frame, every beam I set straight, was proof that no one, not even Karen, could burn me down. Sometimes I walk past that oak tree in the yard, already stretching taller, leaves rustling in the breeze. And I remember the orange sticker, the false police call, the night of gasoline and matches, the gavel cracking in Karen's hand as her kingdom crumbled. I remember the fear in my kids' eyes. And then I remember the way those same eyes lit up when they painted our mailbox sky blue. Fear turned into strength. Loss turned into legacy. Homeowners associations are supposed to protect communities. But when someone twists power into a weapon, it's up to us to fight back, to stand firm, to refuse to bend. Because a house is just walls and beams. But a home is memories, love, and legacy. And no HOA bully can take that away. If you've ever had an HOA abuse power, subscribe now and share your story in the comments. You're not alone. And together, we build stronger than they ever can tear down.